We are live, and welcome everyone. A very special conversation today. From people pleaser to self-lover, Victoria is the self-love scientist, a visionary who has empowered countless individuals to reclaim their sexual confidence and embrace a life of pleasure and fulfillment. With a journey rooted in personal transformation, Victoria Icenhower has risen above the challenges of corporate burnout, battling boundaries, divorce, and turned it into a catalyst for growth and empowerment. Drawing from her own experiences, she has become an expert in guiding others through the complex terrain of intimacy, self-discovery, and empowerment. I'm going to go on just a moment later because this is really good. As a self-love scientist, Victoria understands the profound impact that a healthy relationship with oneself has on overall well-being and sexual empowerment. She has dedicated time to studying and developing transformative techniques and methodologies that blend self-love, psychology, and sexuality, unlocking the secrets to personal fulfillment and ecstatic pleasure. Victoria, welcome and thank you for joining us. How are you doing on this beautiful Sunday?
Thank you, Dr. Kiltz. That was the best introduction ever.
You deserve it. You deserve it.
My morning has been made.
Well, we're just chatting beforehand about all of us humans breathe and drink and eat, and reproduction is one of the most important things. But our sensuality and sexuality, our love of ourselves and others, is highly damaged, I think, in this world. And I'm just really excited about the conversation that you're bringing to so many people in this world. But why don't you tell our listeners and our watchers a little bit about yourself and how you got in this space of helping others on this sexual, sensual life?
Yeah. So I am currently based in the Washington, D.C. area. And for a while now, I grew up in a lovely small town and kind of went about life just kind of doing the things that seemed like, go to school, get the degree, get married, get the house, like all these things that were very successful. And then last year, early summer, I went through a divorce and I separated. And it was through that process where I found myself completely like blank canvas, and I thought to myself, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like for so long, I've been seeking the answers from other people, and I had everything I thought I needed. And it turns out the one thing I was lacking, the one box I never checked, was myself. And so I kind of went through this deep journey of learning to romance and learning to love myself and really fulfilling my heart with everything that I had secretly, like deep down, desired, just did not have the courage to really go after the thing I wanted most. And so the self-love scientist came into the picture. It's going to be a year now.
Wow.
It's 1 year anniversary.
Yeah. Happy anniversary. Well, tell us how it's been going and how you sort of are pushing forward in this and your experience.
Yeah. So let's take it back. So a year ago, I started to become more comfortable with sharing my story because I kind of went MIA during the summer. Everyone's like, I used to be very out in social media, posting pictures, all this cute stuff. And then I was just, out of the picture. And then I started coming back very slowly, finding, my voice to be like, okay, this is actually what's been happening. And I have all this information to share because it blew my mind when I recognized how much power I had when I was more tapped into my pleasure, because that was part of my journey was, in learning to love myself, I had to not only, exercise and eat well. I was like, well, I'm also, I'm a female and I desire companionship, but I'm not ready to like go back out there and like get onto the dating apps yet. I'm like, I need to know what feels good for me. So I started getting to know myself on a more intimate level. And I was like, why does like this part feel more pleasurable? Like, what would it look like if my entire life was more pleasurable? Like a pleasurable mindset, eating pleasurable foods, having a pleasurable career. And once I started sharing this information and like posting on social media, I created a private group for women. And I was like, tell me I'm not the only one like going through this. Like, tell me I'm not the only one who thinks that talking about pleasure, talking about a woman's sensuality is taboo because she's in her power. And it became very popular. I received messages from women who were like, do you offer coaching? Like, I'm struggling with myself, whether she was in a relationship or in a marriage. She wanted to know, like, what can I do to be more of myself, or how can you teach me how to find my voice? And so by being vulnerable and sharing my journey of taking what was painful and turning into something pleasurable, I've been able to cultivate and grow a community where we can take something that's, kind of taboo and not talked about enough and turn it into something that's actually like pretty vital. Getting more in touch with yourself and learning to love yourself actually impacts the way you show up in the world, like in your career, in your relationships. And like we were just talking before, like it's a vital human component. Like we can eat all the good foods, we can read all the books. How is your sexual health? Like it's something that, you know, it's not unfortunately it's not a routine. It's becoming something it's becoming less and less, common for women to have satisfying sex. And one of the root causes is the way she's feeling in her body, the connection with her mind and her desire for more, but just not knowing how to express that.
How in our world today, it's sort of sexual freedom, but is it the sexual freedom is really unsatisfying for the individual who's it's become sort of a commodity in a sense, rather than how do we all, rather than being about sex, but it's about our joy of life and connecting with others, and then the sensuality and sexuality sort of flows from that. Is that, would that be, if you find the joy within yourself and the happiness within yourself and the connection with others in a positive way, the sexuality and sensuality will come. But it's something you have to work out like everything else.
It's
Can you
something,
kind of expand on that?
yeah, it is something that it's a gradual process, right? Like in my programs, I don't immediately tell my client, okay, I'm going to need you to go have sex with your partner or go immediately like and masturbate. It's more of a, how can you start easing in little bits of pleasure and joy and like adding more things to your life that bring you the most happiness. Because as you start adding more for you, like being a little, like people would say, oh, that's, I don't want to be selfish. I was like, no, 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 no. The world wants you to be selfish. And by being more attuned to your needs, you're going to start learning where you've been spending more of your time, more of your energy, feeding into the things that aren't working for you. Like they may have had their parts in the past. However, if you have this desired goal, like if you want to call in this partner, or if you're trying to enhance your intimacy with your partner, then you're going to have to start learning more about yourself, because nobody's a mind reader. And the world is a very vibrant place filled with lots of information, but not all the information that's available is specifically for you. So you need to do the work and put in, have the willingness to expand on what it is it needs to be you.
So are people seeking you because of sexual difficulties or just life difficulties, emotional difficulties, and you're seeing it in our sexual dysfunction, or what? Maybe help me understand that a little bit better.
Yeah. So I work with women who have either come from like a significant change in her relationship, whether she's experiencing a breakup, she's entering a relationship, divorce, etc. And at the same time, if she's in a relationship, she's calling out to me because she sees my work, she sees the confidence, and she's like, how can I be like, I want to be you, or my partner is desiring this kind of thing. And deep down, there's a part of her that wants to be expressed, that wants to feel valued and loved and, desired. And so a lot of women who are coming into my circle are seeking confidence, because that is what my messaging expresses, is the way a woman shows up when she's in her power. And then we kind of start peeling back these little layers, like, well, what does confidence do for you? What does that look like? The next thing you know, we start talking about, like, tell me about your sexual health. Like, what does that even mean and look like to you? And more often than not, it's very, very, very similar to like what we learned in school, very textbook, very simple, like, well, I whether or not she has children or not, or if she's single and looking to get back into the dating game, she's like, well, for so long, like, it wasn't really about me, it was about them. And I was like, well, this is where we change. This is where we start getting into the mindset of, you are worthy to receive pleasure. We just have to get to the root of what's blocking you from allowing yourself to receive that, whether it's compliments or the partner that you want.
We're all seeking intimacy and connections with others, our partners. And is it more dysfunctional today for women and men? Because it's got to be both sides that are part of the puzzle of what's going on. Or have we lost ways to find our joy and happiness as individuals rather than somehow needing someone else to make us happy?
I like this question. I was just reading an article that there's about, sexual satisfaction is desired, but it's more common for women to experience unsatisfying sex now than before. And I believe it's like 45% of women experience some form of sexual unsatisfaction or sexual dysfunction. And when I say sexual dysfunction, it's not just the physical parts of her body, it's how is she emotionally, how is she, socially and psychologically doing in her relationships. And I have worked with men in the past as well. And what's interesting is both parties are sharing this desire of, how can I be this, they have this in their mind, like they have to show up in this way, like a specific way based on what they've seen and experienced. And so we're working together so we can basically kind of cultivate your own version, like your own rule book that is aligned with your values and like what it means like to be like intimate. Like, when did we decide that intimacy was different from sex, right?
We're in a world of our religions, and our habits of masturbation is mostly considered bad, and then our freedom of sex, but just taking care of ourselves is bad. Is it sort of it's like you can't take care of yourself, but you can go out and anyone you want. Is that part of the troubles that we've created in this journey?
I would agree with that. And I do find that like historically, women were the nurturers and they were also the hunters, right? And we're at a place now where the only thing that gives us that gratification, like the instant gratification, is trying to prove ourselves worthy in the eyes of others by doing a lot of work. Like, we live in this very like work hard, play hard kind of society, right? And it's all about status. Well, I've got this promotion, or I make this amount of money, and no amount of that like money is going to match up to the way you feel like inside. Like, you could have a really great job and make lots of money, but you could be, independently solitude and really craving intimacy. Or when you do have, whether you're seeing someone for a long time or a short time, and it's not fulfilling. And so, kind of back to what you said, this idea that we've lost ourselves, absolutely, because we're kind of brought up in this idea of the only way you're going to get by in life is by sacrificing yourself and, making others happy. And that's not true at all. The best way to live through life is to show up for yourself in a way that, when you wake up, you're like, I can't wait to, serve others today. I can't wait to, pick up my kids. I can't wait to, jump on this live. And it's all coming from a place within you, not because you feel obligated, because you desire to do so.
Until you get to the point where you just fall apart because you've been giving and giving and giving and not taking care of you. And then it's a sense that maybe you feel like no one else is paying attention to you and giving you that intimacy. But so often sex is just it's just another thing you have to do rather than the thing you enjoy doing. And one of the things I think is the problem is that we don't have enough intimacy and connection of touch and love and hand holding and things like that doesn't even need to lead to that next level. But then the problem is that our brains are constantly thinking, what's wrong with me? I don't match up. I'm not doing enough. If you look on social media and everything else, everyone else is having sex and looking sexy and those sort of things. Mm-hmm. Is there maybe a false story out there also that, I'm not getting enough and something else is wrong?
Oh, it kind of goes back to, there's so much information out there. There's so much information that we're taking in, and we start playing that comparison game. And the more you play this comparison game of, why don't I look like her? Or, for an example, like the porn industry, it looks like it's literally, there's a reason why, like it's a movie, right? It's all produced, it's all set up. So in our brains, we're thinking, well, why don't I look like that? Why don't I have that same experience? And it does go back to the fact that, like, you give yourself constantly to others, you're pulling yourself further and further away, which is called like dissociating. So when you do finally decide, like, oh, I kind of like, I would like to have sex. So, you whether you get on a dating app or you decide to have a rendezvous, or even with your partner, you're like, we haven't had sex in a while. You're now putting the intention that you feel obligated to do it, but that's it. Whereas we need to be more of, I want to get to know you more on like a deeper level. And I want to, like you said, like physical touch, or even having foreplay with pulling off the idea of like performance. Like, it's not about the performance. It's about like being pleasurably present, whether it's with yourself or with someone else. And so, there is a false narrative, whether it's social media or movies. We look at the movies and we're like, it's just so easy for them. You see the couple get together and they're rolling around and you're like, oh, that looks pretty great. But then in real life, you're like, we got to talk. Like, let's communicate this. Let's talk about our non-negotiables. You need to have these discussions before you start, throwing each other around and, stuff like that. And it can be very confusing, especially for, younger men and women, when they suddenly desire, like, I would like to, I desire intimacy, but they go through this and they're like, well, that wasn't as great as I thought. Like, and I asked them, well, what are you comparing it to? And it could be a past experience. It could be what they've seen on media. And when it comes to your sex life, your sexual health, there is no standard. Like, yours is not going to be the same as mine. And what's important is to understand, like, what feels good for you. And your body is the biggest indicator of whether or not, like, you should move through with it, or if you should, withhold, like, actually, tonight's not the night for me, it's a no. However, we do have that whisper of guilt, like, well, I should, and it becomes a mess.
Well, when in a partnership and people have two different sexual needs, one is more than another, and there may be reasons why one person doesn't feel ready for it or just can't do it as much as the other person. How do we approach that in our relationships?
I'm really glad you mentioned that. That's something that we're also starting to recognize, and it's coming out in research that everybody has a different level of desire or libido, like the way our drivers work, which is probably, if anybody walks away from anything, just know that everybody has a different drive for libido. You can enhance it, you can lower it. So if you are in partnership or you are connecting with someone who's like, you know, I don't need it every once in a while, but you're like, I do, like, I desire to have this more. That's where you need to have these conversations prior to going into the bedroom. So maybe it's while you're walking, or maybe you're sitting together in a room. And, I'll add just a little bit onto that. Having these conversations are going to be, they're not going to be easy. They're going to be a little difficult because at the end of the day, we don't want to disappoint anyone. We don't want them to be like, I hope I'm not asking for too much. And the answer is you're not, because if you don't voice like what you need and you just keep going through the notions, we'll find ourselves in this loop where we're constantly doing the same thing. We're experiencing unsatisfying sex and we're not sharing it because we have this fear of, neglect, rejection, being alone, and asking for like too much, when at the end of the day, like, the right people in your life want nothing more than to hear what you want, like, need to share.
So you have to talk about it, and we have some live people here and commenting, and communication and vulnerability is critical. Rockman brings to the point. So how do we communicate more and allow ourselves to be more vulnerable? Is there a time, a place, a way? Is there a formula? I mean, I think that's what we're all looking for, is sort of like how, when we don't have experience in communicating, and a lot of our communication in our homes today, our work today is not talking, or negativity and fighting. And how can we shift the communication, especially in our intimate lives?
I think and you're right. It's one of those things where we will spend more time thinking about what will go wrong if we ask or speak up, or we spend more time in our minds not even thinking about asking. We just play in our head like, maybe I should ask them, and we start playing this narrative of this potential reality that doesn't even exist. So is there a right time and a right place? I will emphasize that, when it comes to intimacy, I would recommend it before you step into the bedroom, especially if there's something valuable that you desire to address, because nothing is more awkward than, just, you could be making out and then suddenly they're like ready to go and you're like, actually, no. But, how will you know to say that? How will they know what your non-negotiables are? And you mentioned the word vulnerable, like being vulnerable. That is the way to grow. Like, through your vulnerabilities is the only way humans can grow. And expressing yourself, speaking your truth, will only make you stronger. So it starts by saying, hey, kind of start with something positive. Like, I really enjoy spending time with you. I would love to have, I'd like to ask you this question. Like, is this a good time? Is this a good space? I would normally recommend these conversations when you're not operating like heavy machinery. So again, kind of like in the home space, probably like if you're having dinner, probably somewhere that you can hear each other, where you can be physically like present, not on the phones, not somewhere loud or in a movie theater. And it just starts by asking, because when you ask, you start, building up that strength and that courage to be like, I said what I needed to say, and you're going to get your answers.
What is the incidence of sexual dysfunction in our lives and our relationships? Money and sex are always talked about as the reasons for relationship breakups. And is this just inherent to human relationships? Is It's where is the problem really lie?
In terms of
The high incidence of sexual dysfunction in our relationships. Where do we think that's all coming from? I'm in the keto carnivore world. We talk about nutrition and how it plays a role in so many things in our lives. But ultimately, these are things that are happening no matter who you are. And all of us have experienced it one way or another. And men and women have different sexual desires and needs at different times of their lives, at different times of the month, and things like that. Is that's a true statement? Yes or no? What do you think about it? And what can we do about it?
So I want to make sure I'm getting the question correct. Are you looking for what is the cause of dysfunction?
I mean, well, is it? We talked a little bit about this, but I think I'm just the ultimately our sexual relationships are so disrupting to our relationships. I know we've mentioned this a little bit already, but is it the thing we're just not talking about at the beginning because we go in there with this sort of this veil of it's all perfect, and we're not having the conversation early on. I think that's where I'm trying to, how do we have these vulnerable communications, and how do we get taught these things maybe at younger and younger ages? And how can we expose most of us to the self-love and ways to communicate in a way that is we're not afraid, because we want to give that other person something, and then we talked about, but you're losing something because you're missing out. You're not getting anything back for you, and it is a tough journey to be on.
It is a tough journey, and kind of circling back to what you said about that break of why is it that our sexual relationships can be it's either going to make or break a relationship, and it goes back to the information available. We're going into these relationships with this expectation of somehow this person knows already so much about me, I don't have to worry about anything. Or we move into a relationship and what we have been experiencing, what we have been taught, whether it's through the education, the media, you're going into something with what you know. And even though it may be something you've never experienced or you have experienced before, you're applying your perceptions into something with this, you're setting up this unrealistic expectation that it's always going to be fireworks and nostalgia, when in reality, you're a human being. Some days, as you said, your libido is going to be on top. For women, depending on where she is on her cycle, she's going to be ready. And it is so important to have these discussions, because it is unfair to put this pressure, hence the performance anxiety, which takes away from intimacy, to put that on your partner and be like, well, I was hoping to, experience an orgasm, but they never, took me there. When at the end of the day, it's, your brain is technically the one who's going to take you to the end, but you were up in your head the whole time thinking well, this kind of hurts and this doesn't feel good, but I don't want to say anything.
So it's that fight of ego between, different people's thoughts. I would say it's in the mind. This is a mind game, and the mind affects all the organ systems of our body, and our reproductive systems are just another organ system that's affected. Any pieces of advice on what type of things can I work on my mind side to sort of with maybe little helpful hints that will turn the corner?
I think it's important to ask yourself what your values are when it comes to whether it's sexual intimacy, or in my case, I always ask my clients well, what does what does your relationship with sexuality look like? Like, how do you form this relationship or view it as yourself? And, kind of take some time to journal it out, because you might find out there's a lot more to you. Even for men, they find out that deep down they desire an emotional connection, and they are just as much as hopeful romantics as the rest of us. So it's really starting to ask, what is important for you? What do you need to experience the pleasure that you desire? And you might come up against a wall or a block because you may not know, or you are fighting these feelings of shame and guilt around, like, well, I don't, it's not that big of a deal, or I'm not worthy enough, or just kind of, it's the people who want to shut it down quickly. That's when you're like, okay, like, what's coming up, and where do you feel that in your body? Like, if you feel guilty or shame, like, you probably have a lot of GI issues, or if you're getting up in your head, a little bit of headaches. And I generally ask about, your previous experiences, because the experiences you've had in the past are shaping your future relationships as well. So do you want to keep experiencing the same thing, or do you want to change? And change is going to be hard. It's going to be scary. It's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Especially to get, like, the only way to, there's that phrase from, I think it's Ben Franklin, but doing the same thing over and over with no results. So to do the work means you're going to have to be vulnerable, whether you're communicating with your partner, or you're going to have to literally schedule yourself a date night, like, get to know yourself on a more intimate level.
So, and I think that's an important one, in having those routines of outside the bedroom, the other intimacy things, the date nights, or doing something that they want to do and you don't want to do. Those are okay things sometimes to do in all this, and be the love. You're part of love and self love, but giving love is one of those best ways to getting love, but getting it and giving it, making sure that you're giving yourself some of that love also. That's what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. There needs to be a balance. We all start out, or it's more common for everyone to be givers. Like, they just want to give, because the more they give, the less they have to think about themselves. And that's the last thing people want to do.
What is the greatest lesson that you've learned from the clients that you have?
Oh, wow. I think my clients have taught me that we kind of talked about it earlier. The meaning of intimacy is different for everyone. The desires that we have are different for everybody. And my clients have shown me in ways, like, how this changes their lives when we're working through, whether we're helping them overcome feelings of shame, or watching them grow into more confident versions of themselves because we assigned, date nights or pleasure practices. I have learned that everyone's kind of moving at their own pace. Like, everyone has been exposed or experienced some version of what they think intimacy and sex is, and it's holding them back. And so I've learned to really be adaptable, and it's really given me a lot of insight to the different types of love out in the world. I've worked with a lot of different women from different backgrounds, whether they're moms, whether they're single, or I've worked with people who are in different types of, like, they practice non-monogamy in relationships. So that's been a very expansive lesson.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the non-monogamy, and is it something that how do you communicate that with your partner? Because there's going to be some that just can't provide that intimacy, but you still love them dearly and they're part of your family and your life. and how do we deal with those sort of things?
Are you looking to move into a poly relationship, or is this something that, this could be a deep question that we can get into.
Right, right. So that's something you're saying, that you have to have that communication and conversation, and that's something, once again, is honesty, vulnerability, and communication.
Yes, the communication is there. And also, I would encourage you to reflect on, if you've been in this kind of relationship before, like how long you've been with this person. Because it is important, if this is a value for you, like if you are the kind of person who can hold space for multiple partners, and this is something that you're very confident and capable in, it is important to talk about it. However, if this is something new, what is it about being in that kind of relationship, is like, what's the driving factor? Because it could look good, again, on social media, on the movies, the idea of like dating multiple people, like it looks good on the surface level. Let's get down to the deep roots about it. Like, what is that really going to do for you at the end of the day? Because there might also be a chance that maybe you want multiple partners because your current relationship isn't meeting all your needs. How will your partner know what those needs are if you've never expressed them?
So communication, and let them know what your needs are
Yeah.
on a regular basis, or an intimate basis, however it is.
I think it's important to do both, and there does come a time, because I know people are like, oh, I tell them the same thing, over and over. Well, it's going to get to the point where, perhaps it's showing them, or how often are you expressing your needs? What kind of needs are you asking for? And you've mentioned it before, like there might be a time in relationship, there usually comes a sacrifice. So are these the needs that you're willing to sacrifice? Or maybe there's a way you can come to a compromise about them, because it does take a while for people to learn and understand who you are and what you need. There is a difference between communicating and them not listening. So that's another big thing. Are they actually listening with intention, or are you just holding, like, are they just there, and it gives you the ability to talk? Like we had talked about, is there a right time and place? And that is the time where you're like, please don't be on your phone. I really need you to hear me. And then ask them follow-up questions, because you want to feel seen, and you also want your partner to feel seen as well.
You primarily work in the women's side, and where do the men fall into this? What do they need to know?
The mood. um,
And you may not have an answer for that.
I'm like really thinking about it too, because I think what I've heard, amongst my female clients is there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure that they're putting on their partners, or they express that he doesn't see me, or it could be a toxic relationship. And I think when you're asking what do the men need to know, and I think it's important that like we have to get really specific with this question.
Well, I think, how do men and women need to see each other for who and what they are. Also, we can't make a woman a man and man a woman, in our general sense. But is there something that women would want to say to a man, and that it's, again, we need to know more about who each of what we're looking at in our partners, because we often look at it and we see what we think we see, but it's definitely not what's on that side. So how do we, what is that thing that and maybe you don't have an answer for that. It's okay.
I feel like, yeah, I can't set the precedents or like make a rule like all men need to know this. It's more,
Yeah.
I think it's fair to understand that, like, I know what's valuable for me, you know what's valuable for you. And when we're having a discussion, I would encourage you to see things from everyone's perspective besides your own. So be open and willing to listen to what they have to say. Um, and never feel like you're not asking enough, never feel like you're not doing enough, because the more you're communicating, like we like really have talked a lot about communication, but nobody is a mind reader. Like, you can never know too much about someone. And for women out there, we're constantly changing. Our chemistry is changing every single day.
And maybe that's, to men women are beautiful flowers, and we can't be rough. We have to listen and learn, and they're always changing, as you said. That's, well, men need to learn more about women in their needs and desires in order to, because when either side is not happy, and it causes tremendous divide and then breakup or whatever it is, if we could learn more about the nature of women and men from each side, I think we can learn to care for each other in a better way while we're caring for ourselves in the same way. And as you said, there's some non-negotiables in all of that, but these are the things that need to be communicated early on a regular basis. But I always think if we move in with love and kindness and listening, those are the important things that we need to do in order to gain the trust on all sides.
Absolutely. And I love that you said that. I think approaching life through a lens, through love, like through, learning to romance yourself. Like when I wake up, I'm like, okay, how do I want to show up for love? Like, is my intentions behind this in a loving manner, or is there some kind of like harshness behind it? Like, what's the factor behind that? And if we approach others and, treat others as you would want the same thing, like, not one person is the same. So how will they know what's important for you or the way you desire to be treated if you don't say it or don't show them in the ways that you need?
It's really been great having you here, Victoria. Any particular thoughts and ideas that we haven't talked about? Do you think it's important to make sure that our listeners get a chance to learn from?
I think one of the biggest things I've personally learned, and it kind of goes back to like the way my work is with my clients, is your mental health is connected to your sexual health. You could be out there and just having as much sex or pleasure as you want. However, in your brain, if you're in your head, if you're speaking negatively about yourself, if you're seeking negative about others, you will not experience like the deeper intimacy that you might be craving. And I think it's important to recognize that there is a connection component behind that. And that's where, we were talking earlier about the way the media and previous experiences shape the way we do things right now. And, confidence is probably the most common word I hear when I'm working with clients. Like, oh, I just want to feel more confident in my body. And, by asking the right questions, we find out that, they're holding on to a limiting belief in their brain that's preventing them from experiencing pleasure. So, again, it kind of goes with how, like, learning to surround yourself with pleasurable things, finding those little bits of joy, and absolutely scheduling time, to slow down and be in the pleasurable moment and not be as fearful about the future.
Life is risky, and I always say the most important things in life, the most valuable things in life, are the hardest to obtain. in relationships with others are hard, but our toughest one is with ourselves. And what's the in sexual desire and satisfaction and is such an important part of our humanity and our relationships. Maybe talk a little bit about masturbation and self-love and self fulfillment in our sexual needs.
Oh, yeah, I would love to. So that's kind of like a part of the component of like the self-love scientist, right? Because um, like if you were to ask someone on the street, like, did you know that, self-pleasure or masturbation for women is actually quite healthy and like vital to their fertility? And I would guarantee people be like, what? And it's self-pleasure is a wonderful component for women and for men. But I'm going to do a lot more emphasis on for women just because it's again one of those things that's not talked about. You don't see it as depicted in the media. It's very like low hush hush, when in reality there's so many benefits for a woman to experience her own pleasure. This is where she gets to rebuild a relationship and reconnect with her own body. She gets to know like how sensitive she is, and she gets to explore more. And I highly encourage that for all my clients because again, putting yourself out there or being in a partnership and putting all this pressure on like, well, they're supposed to know how to make me feel good. And it's like, not necessarily, and how are you supposed to experience various forms of intimacy or pleasure if you haven't really allowed yourself to do that like on your own? So masturbation you can look this up online. There's a long list of benefits to what this can do for you, not just on the inside, like in terms of regulating your system, like it helps boost your immunity, you sleep better. It evokes a state of confidence. So here's a really good example. If you self-pleasure before you go to work or an interview, I guarantee you're going to knock it out. Guarantee it. Or even a date. And you're going to show up into the room and people are going to be so drawn into your confidence because you're coming from this experience of desire and pleasure, and you're going to feel really good. It lowers your cortisol levels, so you're no longer stressed. And I could keep going on and on. There's a lot of science behind this.
So because maybe there's the stress in the sexual relationship with that, finding that other partner, but there's stress in that, and then there becomes requirements in that relationship that, as you said, if you're trying to do more than one, it becomes more challenging if you're trying to have polygamous relationships. But having it with just the one, whoever we are, that's a normal, common human experience. Would you agree?
Masturbation? Is it common among partners?
Common, normal, no, as an individual, common, normal human experience is masturbation, and we've made it to be something wrong.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so the individual pleasure seeking is normal, and as you said, it has many natural medical benefits and physical benefits and emotional benefits and life benefits. Would you agree?
Yes.
And so what's a good place for people to go to get more? I mean, obviously social media and all these things are tremendously, where do you recommend people go to learn more about self-satisfaction?
I would say, you can go online and you can read. Again, you can get all the knowledge you want. It's how are you going to apply that in terms that work best for you? And I would encourage starting super simple. So let's talk about masturbation for a moment. So let's say, I want you this evening to schedule some time and get to know your body more. Like it all starts with physical touch. Like that's That's what masturbation is. Like that's how you go through it. And instead of immediately reaching down for like your genitals, you start with a massage, right? You start using lotions or oils, and because for some this might be a lot to experience or a lot to handle because of previous experiences, whether it was traumatic or just it's hard for people to want to go back into being intimate with someone if they've experienced unsatisfying sex. So my advice is there's so much great information out there. You can look at different ways to pleasure. You can look at all the really cool toys and the lube. At the end of the day, it's start now by learning more about you and what you need in order to experience pleasure. And that never has to be like, you don't have to sit there and be like, well, I couldn't get myself to orgasm. That's fine. That's actually quite natural, for your body. You're learning to take the anxiety pressure, the performance off of you. So I would start by getting to explore your body, and then eventually, then you can start buying the toys. But start very, very simple. It can be a lot of it can be intimidating, especially if you've never were either given the space or they don't teach you about this in school. You kind of learn about it either you hear it online, like you could be listening to this live going, wait a minute, you mean the whole time I could have been pleasuring myself? Like it's the information that's available for you and how you choose to do it.
Does your website help people on this journey?
What is that?
What's your website?
Oh, my website is theselflovescientist.com, and that is an invitation to work with me and how we integrate different forms of self-love. And like we talk about the different techniques.
And can people learn more about the methods of masturbation and sensuality and sexuality and taking care of themselves on the physical level?
Yes. Yeah, we incorporate different types of techniques. We also work, again, how I made the comment about your mental health. We do cover that as well.
Yeah, and the mental health is really the driver of all of this, I say, because no matter your physical state, the mind is the master of all of it. And your attitude, positive attitude, loving attitude, kindness attitude, generous attitude will help fulfill so many of those things that we're all suffering from. And whether you're vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, pescatarian, or carnivarian, you'll find something in the work that Victoria is sharing for sure, and helping so many people out there. So what's the best way for people to find you, Victoria?
The best way to find me is on Instagram. I'm at Victoria_Icenhower, and that's ICE, and as in Nancy, HOWER. And you can also go to the website, www.theselflovescientist.com. And you can also shoot me an email if you don't do social media and you're watching this on YouTube. You can shoot me an email at victoria.lotuslifestyle@gmail.com.
Are there any books that you recommend for this particular area?
Yes. One of my favorite books is Come As You Are. And that is by, I'm going to butcher her last name. Let me see if I find it. It's by Emily Nagoski.
Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski. We'll make sure that we put a link for that also.
Yeah.
And where are you at in your dreams and your adventure and all this, Victoria?
Dreams. Well, it is definitely the time of year to set those goals for what I would like 2024 to look like. Well, I did have we met at the PCOS con, and that was the first time where I had spoken to a wider audience. And so now 2024 is reaching a much more broader audience and connecting with other wellness nonprofits and practitioners to share the same things that we've been talking about, showing the studies behind your mental health and sexual health and how we can cultivate a more pleasurable lifestyle. And yeah, that's something I have a huge passion for, is to continue being an advocate for something that's considered a bit taboo, and keeping up, cultivating more safe spaces for women and for men as well.
Are there any questions that I haven't asked that you'd like to put forward?
That's a good question. I've really enjoyed our chat so far. Are there any questions in the audience that we didn't address?
Well, I think we got most of them. As I went as we were going, and always some great comments in this world. And our intimate lives are so important to all of us, obviously. And how do we? I think inspiration, what you're doing is, and when I saw you listened to you at the PCOS talk down in the New York area, very impressed with what you're doing. And I think coaches and cheerleaders are the one thing we need more than anything. Fewer doctors, more coaches and cheerleaders. And if your doctor's a better coach and cheerleader, they're going to be a better doctor. And one of the things I think we're missing in science and medicine is a lot of dictatorial messages and not enough intimacy in listening and learning together. I think that's so critical, and you're doing it. And we look forward to much that you're going to be doing in the new year, and we'll keep following you, and then we can follow up maybe with another conversation.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I think if there was a question I'd like to ask, your audience can even ask it too. I do encourage asking people, what does self-love mean to you, and what does pleasure mean to you? Because I guarantee you, most of the time people hear self-love and they'll think of a masturbation practice, or they hear pleasure and they think of sex, when in reality, this is an encompassed, this is everything. The way you eat, the way your relationships are, they're all formed in a modality of love.
And it doesn't mean orgasm.
No, it doesn't have to. That's a bonus.
Right. It doesn't need to involve orgasm, because I think in community we connect with so much love, and that's why I love to go to I love work, because I connect with some people. I love going to church. I connect with people. I love going to the talks like we did down in New York, and connecting with other people. I'm excited. I'd love to see, and my vision is to see more of us in the science realm bring more love and intimacy to the meetings, because and that's what I think my mission is in all of this is, what can we all bring to the self-love of life and others.
Yeah. How can we connect this on a, and not just a physical level or the way things look on the outside, but how it's operating on the inside? And I'm not just saying the emotional component, but self-love, pleasure, masturbation, they're helping your nervous system as well. So finding more research that shows the improvements we're experiencing as human beings because we're able to regulate the nervous system, and having more talks about that. And that's where, I think the advocacy and the science behind it, and integrating that with medicine would be big.
Because we're all looking to scientific studies to prove the ideas, the theories, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're living science. That's the most important part. This is the living science of the communication, the conversations. Just keep on sharing more than anything.
Absolutely. That's why people say, well, why do you call yourself the self-love scientist? And I said, well, life is all about experimenting, and my work is composed of my personal experiences and growth, and then going through training and research. And that's how the only way my clients can achieve what they want is I can tell you exactly what to do. It's What are you doing with the information you have been given? What are you doing with the information you received through your experiences?
Yeah.
So get ready to be vulnerable, and then get ready to grow and get ready to experience a pleasurable life.
And even in hardship challenges, there's pleasure, but it's maybe labeled differently. I always say it's part of the getting to that spot that you're like, wow, that was amazing, but you didn't get there unless you go through the hardship.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So the vulnerability, as Rockman, and communication is critical. It's sometimes hard to have these conversations, but you got to have it, and you got to have it with yourself first in the mirror.
Yes.
Victoria, thank you for joining me. We've been working on this for a few months to happen, and we finally didn't we? Let's make sure. Let's see. All right. God bless everyone. Thank you for joining us on this live, and we'll put this out and on our Carnivore Conversations with Kiltz, and to share more on self-love with Victoria Icenhower. God bless you, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you.